So yeah, we are plastic free. I see my colleagues are on this call as well, which is lovely. And Sarah and Laura, we are sort of the three parts of a stool. We're very strong together. So we have been around for about 3 years now, and we started, as was said, from a women's group that we decided we wanted to do something about the environment. We started with road cleanups, and then we graduated to give away free reusable shopping bags. And now we are giving presentations. We're trying to educate folks about the plastic, the single-use plastic, and the damage that it does. So this particular presentation is called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Plastic. Because back in the 50s, plastic felt liberating. I mean, people, there was sort of that sense of you could throw away everything. It was endless resources. And of course, I still remember my mother being so excited about plastic wrap. You know, it was just an endless and wonderful invention. So the good is that it saved lives. Plastic does save lives. Protective gear, medical equipment. I mean, we just cannot live without plastic these days. It's in everything, computers, cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. So the problem, of course, is that we have gone overboard. We have gone overboard. Plastic is everywhere. The plates we eat from, the stores, the bags, the furniture we sit in, the toys the kids play with, it is just everywhere. You know, synthetic carpets, even the stuff we play on, the turf, it is everywhere. So plastic, since the 50s, we have produced 10, is it 100 billion? Figure is so huge, you know, you can hardly even figure it out, but it is increasing continuously. Since we're going to have production, it's going to quadruple by 2050. And the problem is we have more and more fracking wells, and we cannot find anything anymore practically without it being wrapped in plastic. So because we use less fuel in our cars, there's more we have more windmills, et cetera, we overall using less fuel. So plastic is the industry plan B. I'm asking if somebody would please mute themselves. Could you please all mute yourself? Thank you so much. So now we go to the grocery store and everything is wrapped in plastic, including your potatoes. I mean, it's just absurd. But we are plan B, so there's lots of it. But what happened, the bad thing is that it never goes away. Plastic does not disappear. It just gets smaller and smaller. It breaks down into what we call microplastics. And of course, the smaller the pieces, the more digestible it is, and the more it goes into our entire world. It gets into so small that it turns into nanoparticles that we breathe in. So I'm sure by now, most of you have heard about these giant garbage patches around the globe. We have about 6 of them, and some of them are as large as Texas. This particular one is a close-up of one in the Pacific outside of Chile. Very depressing to look at. So annual single-use plastic in the US is 100 billion plastic bags, 182 billion plastic straws, and the water bottles, 50 billion. It is just unbelievable. So what are we going to do about all this plastic that is everywhere? Well, just look at the plastic bottles, for example. What we can do is to not use them. We can simply, I mean, there is a good use for plastic water and plastic bottles when we don't have access to a good filtration system and we live in an area that has horrible water. But for the rest of us who can use a good filtration system and have a Brita filter or whatever, there really is no excuse to drink water out of a plastic bottle. Get yourself a good bottle of like this one that is recyclable and reusable rather. So if you have problems with your water, you're concerned about the quality of your water, we have a perfectly good testing system over in Stevensville. The problem is that only 10%, 5% of plastic bags, but 10% of plastic overall gets recycled. And why is that? Well, a lot of people are not realizing that what we recycle has to be clean and dry. And then, of course, we have the issue of wishful recycling. And I took a picture of this over in Oyster Cove. Look at all the stuff. I mean, a baby doll stroller and clothing and bags, it is not recyclable. So what we say, we have a slogan, we say, if in doubt, leave it out. Do not throw it in the recycle bin because it contaminates all the other stuff. So now we get to the ugly of plastic. And the problem is it kills. Not only does plastic save lives, but it also kills. Animals are found with stomachs full of plastic and they starve to death. Fish and birds and many different kinds of animals, they choke on the plastic. And look at this whale that was found off in Chesapeake Bay, close to home. It's very, very upsetting. And now scientists are discovering that we are digesting and ingesting a credit card's worth of plastic every week, about 5 grams, through the microplastic, through the leaching from particles from the food and drink containers, and the nanoplastic that we breathe in. So what about these chemicals? What do they actually do to us? The animals are dying, which is very sad, but now we need to ask, what is it doing to us? So how safe is it to be ingesting these estimated 74,000 microplastic particles annually? Is the government taking good care of us? Do we need to protect ourselves? So those are really the questions. And to examine it a little bit closer, we find that there are additives in the plastic. The plastic is not just one thing, because we have, they put in different kinds of additives to make it more stiff, to make it more pliable. And the two particular additives that I want to talk about tonight is bisphosphonyl A, BPA, it's a stiffener, and phthalates. They are applied, they make it pliable and longer lasting plastic. So where do we find the stuff? Well, we find it in the lining of cans, our canned goods. We find it in hard plastic. We find it in toys that the kids are playing with. We find it, believe it or not, in the receipts that we receive at the store. So we find it just about everywhere. So what about these additives? Well, they have in common one very important factor, that they are endocrine disruptors. Well, what does it mean to be an endocrine disruptor? Well, it means that it goes into our system and pretend that it's a hormone. So they're sort of imposters. And the scientists are finding now that they can be, for example, they interrupt our endocrine system in terms of obesogens. They pretend they're obesogens, which is a chemical that alters lipid balance and makes the fat cells bigger. So this points to one possible cause for childhood obesity, according to scientists. Another important thing is that it is being associated with cancer, especially the type of cancer that has to do with the endocrine system, such as breast and prostate cancer. And, whoops, that was a little bit too quick here. It is estimated, sadly, that 10,000 men die every year from cardiovascular disease linked to phthalates. And in terms of male reproduction, it causes a decline in sperm count. developmental development on the male reproductive system, including genital size development. And here we're talking about fragrances. The interesting thing is that the fragrances in products, many of these things contain fragrances because it helps the product to stay on your skin longer. But manufacturers are not required to let us know what goes into these additives. So there's a lack of transparency. Here I am on a face cream with fragrances that did not agree with me. I ended up in the emergency room and looking a lot worse than this picture shows. Now this is an interesting piece of information. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, they do studies regularly of the American population. And back in the 13-14 survey, they found that 95% of adults have detectable levels of bisphosphonates. And they have 100% of adults have detectable levels of phthalates. So again, the question is the government taking good care of us? Are they protecting us from these harmful chemicals? And the answer is yes and no. Because what the government does, it tests these chemicals in rats to discover the lethal dose, and then they decide what is a safe dose for human consumption. Well, however, our federal agency risk assessment methods have not been updated since the late 50s, and it doesn't take into account the low dose of a chemical over time and how that can affect the endocrine system. So the question is the government moving fast enough? And in Europe, here, for example, since 2003, Europe has banned over 1,300 chemicals from cosmetics that are known to cause cancer or genetic mutations, reproductive harm, and birth defects. In comparison, our FDA has banned or restricted only 11 chemicals from cosmetics. Yes, I know, this is scary stuff, right? Well, we're not giving you all this information to scare you, but rather information and knowledge is power. Primarily, it is important, really important, that expectant mothers are informed about the endocrine disrupting chemicals in their environment. We urge any family that are trying to get pregnant, expecting a baby, already have babies, that they obtain guidance. For example, Made Safe Healthy Baby Guide has much useful information. By the way, the Made Safe organization tests products for safety, and they work with manufacturers to make their products safer. So that is one of our recommendations. The Guardian recently had an article that drew attention to the fact that while baby bottles no longer contain BPAs, it still contains millions of microplastics. And it has been discovered that even in the placenta and the fetus, that microplastics exist. So what can we do about it? We need to do something, right? I love this one. Be fantastic, use less plastic. So what can we do? Well, first of all, of course, we can bring our reusable bags to the store, including the produce bags. We can use glass or silicone storage containers, get rid of the Tupperware and plastic stuff. We can use our stainless steel bottles and straws, get rid of the plastic. And here's a good one. Avoid heating your takeout food, dinner, TV dinners in the microwave, because there is no safe microwave products. In other words, when it gets hot, the plastic releases more of its additives. And the same thing actually goes for, don't put it in the dishwasher, because the more scratched a plastic is, the more it releases its additives. Then, of course, we can try to find vegetables that are not wrapped in plastic. Good luck with that one, right? Getting harder and harder. You can reduce your canned goods that are all lined with these chemicals. And the receipts, either don't take a receipt or wash your hands after you've touched them. And now we get to the important, really important thing as well, and that is legislation. And I just want to focus very quickly on the a bill that's right now moving through the Maryland General Assembly, and that is the ban on plastic bags. It failed last year, almost passed, but the session had to close early because of COVID. So make note of this, please. HB 314 is moving through the House, and SB 223 is moving in the Senate. And there has been hearings on it so far. And unfortunately, even though we thought it was going to be a done deal this year because it almost passed last year, this is not so, because the folks are concerned about the added cost of paper bags for the retailers. And this bill, unfortunately, does not include a, 7 cents a paper bag across the board. They don't have any cost associated with it, and that's a bit of a negative. Now, on the federal level, we have an excellent bill that's called Break Free from Plastic. And that is, it does a lot of good things. I'm not going to go over it because I know we are time shortage here. But the point here is that our two liberal senators, both Democrats, are not on this bill, and they need to be. So we need to push for that. Just a quick note, I couldn't resist. Here's my granddaughter, but in Denmark, depositing the family's bottles, all the bottles, plastic, glass, all of it. And we, of course, would love to have a container bill in this in Maryland. It's in this assembly, but it doesn't look like it's doing a lot of movement this year. But here's my granddaughter loving to take the family's bottles, and she makes a nice allowance in the deal here. So before I close, I just want to give a little, a little spiel about plastic-free QAC. We have, and you're talking about speakers. If you need another speaker, we have a very good presentation on recycling and recycling correctly, which I think a lot of us need to be reminded of. We're also working on a workshop. We're developing a workshop on building plastic-free habits. In addition to that, we're focused on shrink wrap. The boat shrink wrap is unbelievable amount of it in our county. We're working on that, trying to shift people's minds and get canvas instead. Lastly, we're working with the Park and Rec department to get dispensers for our fishing lines, because they are a big problem as well in our environment. So with that, I will conclude, and thank you for listening to all of this. And maybe you have questions. We encourage you to sign up with us, get our newsletter and our updates. And if there are any questions, I will be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Bente. That was so very informative. Great presentation. Yeah, we need to spread the word. And I'm just going to start 2 things. If you can send me the information, the call to action information, we will get that out to the club members so that we can be calling our Maryland General Assembly members and our members of Congress, especially our liberal senators. This should be very low-hanging fruit, right?
Right.
And then
Thank you.
I was curious about one thing, because you were talking about pregnant women and the avoidance of plastic. So I'm just wondering, in the name of, for the sake of education about plastics and avoidance, if any literature or studies or anything about the danger of plastics, do you know if it's been written into the standards of care for obstetricians and other medical professions areas?
I cannot answer that question. Excellent
That's
question.
just something I've been thinking about. It might be, as you all move along and take on more projects, that might be something that you could explore.
I can speak briefly about infertility because I worked for years in the area of infertility, and it is in the literature there, plastic bottles, avoiding plastic bottles and plastic products in particular. And that's been, public knowledge for a while, but I think it's getting more widely accepted, and the word is.
It would be good to get it written into the medical standards of care for the various medical areas. So just a thought. Lynn, did you have a
That's an
question?
excellent.
Yeah, hi Bente, how are you? I have a question. So besides growing your
Hi,
own,
Lynn. Hi, Lynn. How are you?
hi. Besides growing my own vegetable garden, which I can't grow stuff, what supermarkets are easier to buy things at that are not overly packaged? Do you have any idea?
Well,
I'm thinking like I might have to drive to Montgomery County or something like that because they seem to be a little more progressive there at their stores.
Well, I think the mom's supermarket, and Sarah can speak to that. She shops there. Even Trader Joe's, I don't know. Whole Foods is good. Whole Foods is good. Of course, they're a little more expensive, but they're generally very good. And
Yeah,
go ahead, Sarah.
Trader Joe's has more of a section, but they're probably most guilty for a lot of plastic wrapping. Whole Foods tends to have more open produce, but it's difficult here on Kent Island. You get little sections at Safeway and Food Lion, but and in Easton, even the Aldi in Easton is has plastic.
So much plastic.
Yeah, maybe the Amish market in Easton.
Mm.
I was just thinking about that. They may not be overly packaged because their stuff is kind of like farm to store. So it doesn't go through a bunch of processors.
And farmers
And we,
market.
of course, have our own farmers market every Thursday.
Yeah,
Chester,
yeah,
Stevensville.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know I can do better. I just, I need to think about it
It's a
before I shop.
challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a
Nan?
question. Yes, hi Bente, great presentation. And
Hi,
I want
Nan.
to shout out for the farmer's market because I ordered soup and salad from them. They deliver, and they delivered it in a paper, cardboard container. Both the salad and the soup was in like a cardboard container. So that was nice. But
Good.
I was wondering about the counties because I don't think Queen Anne's, because I asked today, actually, I was just up at the Love Point Deli and I did take my own reusable bag to get what I had. But a lot of times I will forget unless, I don't always have it. But I mentioned to him, I said, I thought we were going to have, no more plastic bags. And he says it goes from county to county. And I noticed like at Safeway, they don't even give you an option of having paper. But if I go down to Easton, to the Harris Teeter, you can get paper bags. So is it by county or how does that work?
Well, our Safeway, you can ask for paper. They will give it to you. They don't
Okay.
show you it. They don't ask you, but they have it behind the counter, but it's a hit and miss situation until we get this bill passed.
Redner's in Chestertown does big paper bags, with the handles and everything. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a
They passed
plastic
law
bag there.
back in,
Yeah.
no, they passed a law, the mayor there passed a law in 2012. So they have been plastic free for all that time,
Wonderful.
which is great. They set a great example. And now Delaware,
Wonderful.
they went into effect with their ban on plastic here on January 1st. So, there are about 500 locations around the country that have a plastic ban. It's about time that we pass it here.
Can I just mention something?
And I think
about-
one good argument is when you, I'm sorry?
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
one
Well,
good
just give
argument
us-
is this ban, plastic ban,
Go ahead.
doesn't go into effect until July of 2022. So that there's time to recover from the COVID and all of that before retailers have to deal with it.
Liz, did
I
you
was
have a
go-
question?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, and we live right on the border with Delaware, so we do a lot in Delaware, including our shopping. And so we've just started that curbside, online ordering, curbside pickup, and they give you these even in Delaware, so they give you these very heavy plastic. I mean, it's gone the opposite direction. They were getting thinner and thinner for a long time. And now they're beginning to give you these really heavy plastic bags that are supposedly reusable 120 times. The problem is then you start to collect a lot of them. If that's all you're doing, they put everything in these. I did ask the people at Acme that were, delivering these or putting them in our trunk, what can we do? And they said, actually, you can select, if you're ordering online, you can select you can just tell them that you don't want them to bag it and that you'll bring your own. And so I imagine then they could just bring you a shopping cart full of your stuff, and then you could put your things in your own bags and put it in the trunk that way. So I think sometimes it's just a matter of you have to get creative and ask about it.
Well, I
This
think
is Jim.
Aldi's has the answer. They charge 7 cents per bag, per paper bag. And
Okay.
we did a survey and we found out that people are not using disposable bags. They're bringing their own bags there because they have to pay for the paper bags, and people don't want to pay for it. So unfortunately, this legislation doesn't include a charge.
So,
But of course, retailers are allowed to charge. They can just individually charge if they want to.
yeah, I know California has the plastic bag ban. I know when I was there last time, I didn't realize that, and I didn't bring my own bag when
Had
we
it for a
went to
while.
CVS, and we had, bought a bunch of items, so we ended up having to buy a plastic bag. But so California is progressive and leading the charge. So we have time for maybe one more question, Jim?
Yeah, Bente, thank you for the presentation. It was just wonderful. I learned a lot and took notes that I had on paper. You mentioned our 2 senators are not on the bill. Does that mean they're opposed to it, or they're just not on it?
I think they just haven't been pressured yet.
Okay. Right.
That's what I'm assuming. So, but that's something we need to. I talked to one of them, one staff, and she said, "Oh yeah, I have to get to it." It's sort of they need pressure.
Okay.
They need all of us to give them a call or send them an email, please.
Okay.
Again, Ben, if you want to write up, send me an action alert with all that information, the bill
Okay.
numbers, and that would be great. And then I lied. I do have one more question. Have you approached our District 36 legislators? I think I know the answer to this, but have you approached them about the sponsorship of the state bill, and what was
Yes,
their
of course
response?
we have. Well, unfortunately, all of them has voted against it last year. As I mentioned earlier to you, Crystal, we are meeting tomorrow morning with Senator Hershey, and he's sort of a bill prevention kind of guy. But we have hope, and we're going to bring hopefully a farmer and a pet store owner, and so we're going to try to convince him that it's a good idea.
Very good.
But they're negative.
Well, thank you so much for this, just such an
Hey,
important.
Crystal, it's
yes.
Lynn. Tanya has had her hand up. I think she's on
I'm
mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me see.
Hi. I just had we were talking earlier about which grocery stores to go to. I think it's up to us as consumers to tell the grocery stores we want them to package this stuff in less plastic. I think that I know Food Lion is notorious for taking a head of broccoli and putting it on a plastic tray wrapped in plastic. And we just need to tell them that we want them to stop doing this. That we would prefer that they allow us to buy it without the plastic. Also, I sail up in New England. Hi, I'm a sailor too. And I have seen grocery stores that instead of the plastic roll-off that you put the vegetables in to take it home, they have paper bags.
Yep.
You know, like little paper. And I think that's a great option. You know, the same thing that you would put like a wine bottle in. They're offering that to put your vegetables in to take home. So anyway, I think it's up to us as consumers to let them know. If our legislators won't pass the laws, we can tell the companies what we want.
Thank you for saying that. I'm with Plastic Free QAC as well, and that's how customers at Trader Joe's made a huge difference. They demanded that they make changes, and they did. So, and you're right. We all need to talk to the places that we shop at and say, no, this is not good. We don't want plastic. We want to make changes. So that's a great idea.
Great idea. Well, thank you all so much. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for the great presentation. Just so informational and so important. And thanks to everybody who attended the meeting. I hope you got a lot of key takeaways. I know that I did.